today's gospel, what we have is Jesus taking on the Pharisees. They love the salutations in the marketplace. They love the salutation rabbi. They love the places of honor in the synagogues and in the marketplaces. They loved all of that. So what we see in the Gospels is not only in this particular gospel, but in other gospels, that certainly Jesus takes on the religious leaders. And certainly, especially in the case of the Pharisees, you would think that Jesus would appreciate and love the Pharisees, that he would give them an attaboy, because when we think about the Pharisees, those were the ones who really ascribed to the law. They loved the law. They were scholars in the law. They knew the Hebrew scriptures. They were attuned to the prophecies of the Messiah. They were looking for the Messiah. They were the ones who certainly took on the desire for the Messiah. They did all those things that you would think would be appreciated by Jesus, and yet he gives them severe condemnation. And so, and not all of them, certainly not all of the Pharisees, but certainly a number of them he does take on. So what was the problem with Jesus and especially the Pharisees? Well, I think one of the things is, again, in the reading today, is that you have the fact that the Pharisees really didn't think about, I want to be a Pharisee because I want all the benefits. I want to have the salutations and I want to have the best seats in the marketplaces and in all the places. I want people to move out of my way, just kind of like maybe an athlete or a movie star today. Do you know who I am? Get out of my way. I'm coming through. They didn't start out like that, but in a society that really focused a lot of attention on religion, that really appreciated religion, that they certainly had that. And so they were, in a way, kind of unaware of themselves. They were kind of unaware of their situation, that they just kind of found themselves into it, and they really didn't think much about it. But again, that's not what the Lord wanted people to do, to use their ability to proclaim God's message and their ability to teach and to instruct would somehow give them all these great benefits. That wasn't Jesus' desire. So that's one thing. The other thing is thinking about themselves, thinking about their putting the spotlight on themselves, putting the spotlight on other people. That how dare you, apostles go and pick heads of grain on the Sabbath? How, putting the spotlight on them, putting the spotlight on other people, being fussy, thinking about, your tassels aren't long enough or things like that. That's not going to bring converts. Doing the finger, at others, or putting the spotlight of deficiencies upon themselves. That's not going to bring in new converts. Being fussy about their particular appearance and their supposed holiness, that's not going to bring in converts. And in fact, the other thing is that the converts that did come were kind of treated as second-class citizens, because they certainly weren't given the ability to go into their household. That would make them unclean. They weren't given places of honor in the temple. In fact, they were given, the marketplace. Just go over there. Just set a seat over there, or just stand over there, where they were selling the animals for the sacrifice and changing the monies for the temple. So again, that's not going to bring in converts. So even though they certainly knew about the prophecies that the Gentiles would be coming, and that they would be wanting to come, they certainly didn't make that effort to make them feel welcome, and certainly desiring to have them in their midst. Also, the exalting the some of the commandments, not only having the commandments, but also trying to exalt them. So like the Sabbath day, There were all these kinds of rules and regulations as to what constituted work. So it led to hypocrisy, all this trying to build up the Sabbath and, put a fence and a wall around the Sabbath. It led to hypocrisy. So Jesus couldn't heal on the Sabbath. They were appalled that Jesus was healing on the Sabbath. And yet he said, if one of you has an animal that needs to be watered and needs to be fed, you'll let the animal out on the Sabbath. If your animal falls into a cistern, or one of your friends or relatives falls into a cistern, you're certainly going to help him out. But why wouldn't you allow for healing on the Sabbath? So again, that hypocrisy with the rules and the regulations led to that scrupulosity and led to certainly a hypocrisy on their part. Scrupulously keeping the commandments, looking at the sins of others but not themselves. Again, we think about that they didn't see their own pride, that they didn't really think about their need for repentance. They rejected many rejected the proclamations of John the Baptist. They would come there, they would look around, they would report back to their leaders, but they really had no intention of receiving the water baptism for forgiveness, because they really didn't think that they had that kind of a sin, but they failed to see their own pride. And then using their positions of authority again to exalt themselves. And so in all these kinds of things, we really see Jesus taking on some of the religious leaders, some of the Pharisees, for their practices. And it's good sometimes to take that kind of a look at ourselves, to take a look at ourselves, because certainly our human nature can fall into the same traps that the Pharisees do, that can see ourselves as, that I'm doing all this for God. Well, of course, God's going to do this for me. Of course, I'm entitled to this. Of course, I'm entitled to this and to this, because, after all, I'm doing all these things for God. So again, it's good to think about ourselves. It's good to kind of place ourselves in that situation and to see where, if we, like the Pharisees, have fallen into these kind of traps of our fallen human nature, that is going to bring us down. Thanks, and God bless.